Hi, and welcome to this AI in C# video on the Microsoft Agent Framework. Today we're going to look into OpenAI's Response API and more specifically the file search tool. So the file search tool is a way of doing RAG instead of doing it yourself. So they have up in their platform portal for the API, they have a place where you can upload files and you can make a vector store and put those files into that vector store. We can also do that in code, which we're going to see today. I'm personally not using this because I like to have more control over my retrieval augmented generation, what my vectors look like, better chunking and such things. But for some simple things where you just need to grab a bunch of PDFs and be able to search in them, this works really fine and very easy to do. So let's jump into the code and our sample here. And we are in the sample called search file tool under OpenAI Response. In order to do this, we of course need some data. So I've made a PDF which contains a secret value and the word of the day, which is banana cake. And up here in the portal, we see that we have no files and no vector stores right now. We're going to see that a little later on. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the regular client like we do. And once we have done that, we instead of making a file or a chat client or a response client, we are actually going to make an OpenAI file client instead. And then we're also going to make a vector store client because we need both of them. Then we're going to store the file ID and the vector store ID. So I'm going to end up making one vector store with one file in it. Real life, you would have more, of course. But I'm keeping track of the IDs of these two so I can delete them at the end and clean up from this sample. So we're going to grab our secret data PDF, that's the file name, and we're going to grab it from the data folder that we just saw. So we get our file as bytes, and once we have them as bytes, we can use the file client to upload it. So it's byte data, the file name, and the purpose of this data is user data. We can send it to other things like batches, fine-tuning and stuff, but that's not what we are needing here. We just want it as user data. So we have now uploaded the file. So we should be able to go here and refresh and see our file up here. In the same manner, we're gonna create our vector store, and we're just gonna call it my vector store, and grab that ID of that. And then we're gonna upload the file we had already to that vector store. So up here, we will now see that we have a vector store, and in that we have a reference to our file. Now we're going to make on our normal client, but of course with the OpenAI response client instead of chat client. And what we are going to do is we are telling it only to use tools, so no world knowledge. And we are giving it one tool called the hosted file search tool. And the hosted file search tool needs a bit of input. It needs to know what is it allowed to search in. So in our case here, it's allowed to search in files with our specific file, and it's allowed to search in our vector store with our specific vector store ID. There's a bunch of settings you can do on this, but this is just an introduction, and you can go in and see further on. But once we have this, we can simply just make a normal question to the LLM, giving now that we have this tool. So what is word of the day, it wouldn't know unless it was able to actually look inside that PDF and figure it out. So we get our response back, and it says the word of the day is banana cake. So it must have gone in there because this is a remote tool, we can't see that it was in there calling anything. We get no information about what the data was in the RAG and so on, and that's one of the reasons I'd like to help to get my own system up and running. We get our input tokens, which was our different files and stuff, and the output tokens, which was just the banana cake. And beyond that, we are paying for our vector store. So it comes up here and say how much we have used it and or how much it costs per day based on what we do. So it's not part of the token cost. It is an additional cost to have this stored here. So that might also be a reason why you want to put it in a SQL server you have already instead of hosting yet another set of data. But as we can see, it's very simple to get some RAG up and running compared to the real thing. And here in my finally, I'm just gonna delete my vector store and my file. So I have cleaned up from myself, else it would just make new again and again. So now I've cleaned up and we have an empty system up here where I can refresh here. And the vector store and file is gone. So that's everything there is to running it. If you need to have more data, you need to, of course, define some strategies on how to chunk the data and so on. But I will leave that for you on your own. For now, this was everything. See you in the next one.